The golden age of mathematics had waned. What was once a unified ordo numeri had fractured across generations, splintering into specialized schools focused on transforming ancient mysteries into modern sciences. Astrology to astronomy, alchemy to chemistry, natural philosophy to biology. Each faction worked to mathematize reality, believing their approach held the key to the universe's secrets. None realized the dark shadow manipulating events from afar. Hidden in a fortress on Montenegro, at the edge of a cliff, the seemingly immortal Cesare Borgia, now the null emperor, observed the unfurling of history. Time had sculpted his once cruelly handsome face into something stark, almost inhuman. He had nullified the years, not through self-annihilating infinite division like Del Ferro, but through other, more self-serving methods. "The cycle repeats," he murmured to his agent, Arago. "Del Ferro and Tartaglia conquered the cubic, Ferrari the quartic. The quintic resists, but now a new force emerges. Young, untested, dangerous. A political revolutionary, it seems," his underling Arago noted. "Politics is secondary," the emperor countered. "His true revolution is mathematical. He probes the very fabric of mathematical reality. If he matures, he could unify what we've spent centuries dividing." Arago studied the equations. "These patterns, an underlying lattice connecting equation groups?" "Precisely. The algebraic correspondence. A deep symmetry revealing how all equations relate. If the ordo numeri factions grasp this, the schism we engineered could heal." The emperor's gaze hardened. "Our work undone. What is left of the ordo already watches him. Create the conditions, Arago. His temperament is his weakness. Arrange a duel. Ensure he does not survive." Meanwhile, in Paris's Latin Quarter, 20-year-old Evariste Galois hunched over papers in a cafe. His intense eyes and dark curls spoke more of a poet than a mathematical prodigy who, despite his youth, had already faced significant rejection. Twice denied entry to the École Polytechnique, expelled from the École Normale, and twice imprisoned for Republican activities, his life was marked by conflict with the establishment. Even his groundbreaking papers submitted to the French Academy of Sciences were lost or dismissed, his published work ignored or misunderstood by contemporaries unable to grasp his level of insight. Still wrestling with impossible equations? Auguste Chevalier, a friend and fellow Republican, clapped his shoulder. "Not impossible. Elusive," Galois replied, tapping his notes. "There's a pattern, a symmetry explaining why some equations yield solutions and others don't. This transcends politics. It could change our understanding of everything." He had, in fact, already developed a complete theory for when polynomial equations could be solved by radicals, cracking a centuries-old problem. Auguste smiled. "Two worlds, Evariste. Mathematics and politics, both revolutionary, both dangerous." The cafe door opened. Stéphanie Félicie Potarin du Motel, later described by Galois as potentially involved in the events leading to his duel, approached. "Monsieur Galois, I'm told you possess the most brilliant mind in Paris." Galois stammered, and used to such attention. "Who?" "A mutual acquaintance," she said smoothly, placing an envelope on the table. "He wishes to discuss your theories on the quintic equation. Privately." After she left, Auguste eyed the envelope. "Be careful." But Galois was already reading, eyes wide. "Catalan. Charles Catalan wants to meet. He sees the structural connections. The Academy mathematician who rejected your papers? Auguste frowned. Convenient. And why send her? This is my chance. Galois gathered his papers, oblivious to the potential setup, his mind alight with the possibility of finally being heard. But as the hour of the meeting approached, a subtle unease crept over him. The Jardin du Luxembourg, usually filled with students and philosophers, seemed strangely empty that overcast morning. A heavy silence hung over the hedgerows and fountains, as if the very geometry of the place had been disrupted. Charles Catalan was not there. Instead, two men in dark coats appeared from behind the Medici fountain. One bore the insignia of the École Polytechnique, the other carried a letter, sealed with wax but unsigned. Galois opened it quickly. "You're close," it read. "Too close. The structure you seek must remain hidden until the world is ready. Consider this your final warning." Auguste Chevalier, watching from a distance with concealed anxiety, approached as the messengers departed. That was no mathematician's greeting. Galois' hands trembled slightly, more from fury than fear. "They've seen it. They know. My work threatens something foundational. You should take this to the public," Auguste urged. "Expose them. Publish everything." "They would bury it," Galois snapped. "Or worse, erase me." He paused, a strange stillness overcoming his face. Unless they fear what I've written because it cannot be silenced by violence." That night, Galois did not return home. He wandered the streets of Paris like a ghost in his own life, his mind suspended between revolutionary algebra and the shadows of betrayal. His thoughts turned inward, recursive, collapsing and unfolding like the group structures he had defined. Street lamps flickered like diminishing variables along the Rue Saint-Martin. Passing the Place de la République, he paused a moment before the statue of Marianne, the symbol of the French Republic. As he raised his hand in an instinctive, solemn salute, more to the ideal than to any government, a pair of men in military attire emerged from the gloom. "You pay homage to that whore of a statue," one of them sneered. "Are you mad, boy?" said the other. "Do you dream of guillotines and chaos?" Galois, too weary for conflict, offered only silence. But the silence was read as defiance. Words turned sharp. Accusations flew. Traitor. Jacobin. Heretic of reason. One of them struck Galois' shoulder, and in a moment of cold clarity, he responded, not with violence but with dignity. "If you wish to argue further," he said, "let us meet with pistols. At dawn." A smirk. A nod. The time and place were set. As they disappeared into the fog, Galois stood alone beneath the statue of the Republic. Her torch, dulled by grime and time, no longer lit the path. By the time he returned to his lodging, something had crystallized in his mind. The encounter had not been an accident. The meeting at the garden, the harassers at the square, the convergence of political rage and mathematical truth. It was all connected, components of a larger, invisible equation. The duel had already been arranged. A few lines scribbled in his diary from that day survive, blurred by rain and time. They fear the Galois group not because it exists, but because it connects. The root of the quintic is not a number, it is a principle. A dangerous one. The night before the duel, May 29th, 1832, was not spent resting. Instead, Galois feverishly wrote, not a confession, but a mathematical testament. His manuscripts from that night bear marginalia. "I have no time." He raced against the dawn, desperate to preserve discoveries he feared would die with him. In a final letter to Auguste Chevalier, he wrote, "I have made some new discoveries in analysis. If I perish, I beg the patriots, my friends, not to reproach me for dying otherwise than for my country." At dawn on May 30th, 1832, exhausted, Galois met his opponent in a field at Gentilly, south of Paris. A single pistol shot struck his abdomen. No physician was present. Abandoned, he was found by a peasant and taken to Cochin Hospital. He died the next day, May 31st, from peritonitis. The identity of his killer remains unknown, lost to history, though suspicion fell on rivals connected to Stephanie Felicie or political enemies. No charges were filed. It was a tragedy, a potential assassination disguised as a duel, snuffing out a genius. Galois was buried in a common grave, attended only by political allies. No mathematicians were present. His revolutionary work, entrusted to his brother and Chevalier, faced institutional neglect and near total obscurity. For 15 agonizing years, mathematics grappled with problems Galois had already solved, a profound delay in scientific progress. Finally, in 1843, Joseph Leville, Catalan's student, reopened the case, studying the manuscripts. It took years, but he deciphered the dense work, recognizing its profound correctness and admirable elegance. In 1846, he published Galois Papers, resurrecting the young mathematician's legacy. And somewhere far beyond, hidden in shadows, the Null Emperor plotted his next move against the resurgent order that threatened his power with a theory of unification of algebraic structures developed by a fallen prodigy named Évariste Galois. The battle for the mathematical soul of reality continued, with Galois theory standing as a monument to a young revolutionary who, like a distant star, had burned briefly but brilliantly, illuminating a path forward that others would follow, mapping constellations, not of stars but of groups.